Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into something that's got me pretty excited, and that is what's called ByteTrack.
ByteTrack.
ByteTrack, right? So
Yeah.
it's an algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to be talking all about it. But like the reason I'm excited is because it's all about computer vision,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and object tracking. Like
Right.
so, you know, like if you think about it, you've got self-driving cars, you've got security cameras,
Mm-hmm.
you've got like even analyzing sports.
Yeah.
And, you know, just all these different ways that we need to be able to keep track of, like, objects
Right.
that are moving,
Right.
right? And that's what object tracking is all about.
Yeah, and ByteTrack is really interesting because what it does is it actually uses information that a lot of other tracking algorithms just kind of throw away.
Oh, really?
And it uses it in a really clever way to get some really surprisingly good results.
So it's like taking what everyone else thinks is junk and turning it into treasure.
Yeah, you could think about it that way.
Okay, so I'm already hooked. But uh, can we back up for a second?
Right.
Because I think before we dive into, like, the nuts and bolts of ByteTrack,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be helpful to just kind of, like, level set.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
what is object detection?
Right.
Because like a lot of people listening, they might not be like computer vision gurus. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So like, how does that relate to ByteTrack?
So object detection, you can think of it as like the first step
Okay.
in this whole process, right? So before you can track something, you have to know that it's there.
Right.
And so you have these algorithms called object detectors, and they basically look at an image or a video frame, and they try to identify the different objects that are in there.
Okay.
So they'll say, like, oh, I think I see a car over here. I think I see a cursor over there.
Okay.
And they give you like a little bounding box around where they think those objects are.
Right. Right.
Now, traditionally, what a lot of object tracking algorithms do is they take those detections
Okay.
and they only use the ones that the object detector is really confident about.
So it's like they say, oh yeah, that's definitely a car.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm 99% sure this is a car, so we're going to use that information.
Got it.
But there are also a lot of detections that the object detector is kind of unsure about.
Oh, right.
It might say like, oh, I think that might be a person, but I'm only like 50% sure.
Right.
And so traditionally those detections would just get thrown away.
Okay.
And the ByteTrack says, wait a minute, let's not do that.
Interesting.
Let's actually try to use that information, even though it's a little bit fuzzy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really curious now, like, how does that actually work? Because like, if it's only 50% sure, isn't that going to mess things up?
Well, that's the clever part, right? So you have to think about how object tracking works at a high level.
Okay.
It's basically trying to match objects from one frame to the next, right?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So let's say you have a video of a car driving down the street.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be able to say, okay, that's the same car in this frame, in this frame, in this frame, even though its position is changing. So what ByteTrack does is it says, okay, even if we're not 100% sure that something is a car in this frame,
Right.
if it's in a similar position to where we saw a car in the previous frame,
Okay.
and it's moving in a similar way, then it's probably the same car.
Okay, so it's kind of like using the context of the video
Exactly.
to kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, it's like a detective looking at all the clues,
Uh-huh.
even the ones that might seem a little bit shaky at first.
I like that analogy, yeah.
And by doing that, it's able to maintain track of objects even when they're partially hidden,
Okay.
or when they're moving really quickly, or when the object detector just isn't very confident about what it's seeing.
So it's like it's not giving up on those objects too quickly.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so, but how does it like actually measure how similar those objects are?
Yeah.
Like, is there some kind of like magical formula?
There is a formula, but it's not actually that magical.
Okay.
It's called intersection over union.
Okay, I've heard of that before, but I don't really like fully understand it.
Yeah. It's a pretty simple concept, actually.
Okay.
So imagine you have two overlapping circles.
Okay.
Intersection over union is basically just measuring the percentage of their shared area compared to their total combined area.
Okay.
So the higher the overlap, the more similar the objects are likely to be.
Okay, so it's like a way of saying like, okay, these two things are really close together, so they're probably the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and ByteTrack uses that measurement to say, okay, even if we're not sure what this object is,
Right.
if it has a high intersection over union with an object that we tracked in the previous frame, then it's probably the same object.
Okay, so it's like looking at the shape and the position.
Yeah, the spatial relationship between the two objects.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so this is all like really cool and impressive. But like, what does it actually mean for the real world? Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the ways that ByteTrack is being used right now?
Oh, there are so many applications. It's really exciting.
Okay, cool.
So for example, one area where it's being used is in surveillance.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So, you have security cameras everywhere these days,
Right.
and they're generating just massive amounts of video footage.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for humans to sit there and watch all of that footage and try to identify, suspicious activity.
Right.
So ByteTrack can be used to automatically track people and vehicles in that footage.
Okay.
And it can alert security personnel if it detects something unusual, like, for example, if somebody is loitering in an area where they shouldn't be.
Right. Or like if a car is going the wrong way down a one-way street or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can really help to improve security and safety.
Yeah, that's huge.
Another area where it's being used is in traffic analysis.
Okay.
So you can use ByteTrack to count cars, to analyze traffic flow patterns,
Right.
and even to help with city planning, like deciding where to put new roads or traffic lights.
Right. So it can like optimize traffic flow
Exactly.
and make things more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got like security, we've got traffic, like what else?
Well, it's also being used in robotics.
Oh, cool.
So, robots are becoming increasingly common in all sorts of environments, from warehouses to hospitals to even our homes.
Right.
And they need to be able to navigate those environments safely and effectively.
Right. They can't just be bumping into things.
Exactly. Yeah. And so ByteTrack can be used to help robots track moving objects,
Okay.
like people or other robots.
Right.
And that allows them to avoid collisions and to interact with those objects in a more intelligent way.
Okay. So it's like giving robots a better understanding of their surroundings.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. I also read that it's being used in sports analysis too, right?
Yeah, that's a really exciting area.
Yeah.
So you can use ByteTrack to track player movements,
Mm-hmm.
ball trajectories,
Yeah.
and it can even be used to generate like heat maps of where players are spending most of their time on the field.
Oh, wow. So it can like give coaches and analysts like a whole new level of insight into the game.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really revolutionizing the way that we understand and experience sports.
So this is all incredibly impressive, right? Like ByteTrack is clearly a really powerful algorithm. But like what I find really exciting is like the bigger picture here, It's almost like a new way of thinking about data.
Yeah.
Like sometimes more is more, even when the data seems less reliable at first glance.
Right.
It's like we don't have to be so quick to throw things away.
Yeah, exactly. And ByteTrack really demonstrates that sometimes the most valuable insights are hidden in the data that we might otherwise overlook.
Right. It's like finding the diamond in the rough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so as we kind of like wrap up our deep dive into ByteTrack, I want to leave everyone listening with like a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Like what other areas in our lives could benefit from this kind of use everything approach?
Yeah.
Like could it change the way we analyze data or make decisions even in our own personal lives?
That's a great question.
It's something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
Yeah,
Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into ByteTrack.
it was my pleasure.
And for everyone listening out there, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.